Some 400 years after Jesus told his disciples that they were to be no part of the world, a group of people claiming to be Christians decided that they needed to apply that literally. So thousands of them left everything they owned behind. They left their possessions, their relatives, their entire way of life. They moved out into isolation in the deserts of Egypt. They became known as the Anchorites. Now, the Anchorites have a long history, and we're not going to talk much about that. But down through the ages, there are others that have followed that isolationist ideal, thinking that somehow, some way, they are obeying the command to be no part of the world. However, when Jesus gave that command, he was not really telling his followers that they should become antisocial. No, he knew that they would have to live in the world, interact with people of the world, work in some cases with people of the world, go to school with worldly people. And yet, at the same time, there's no denying the counsel to be no part of the world. And then in addition to that, the disciple James was inspired to write something that goes even further. Notice James chapter 1 and verse 27. Because here, James writes, the form of worship that is clean and undefiled from the standpoint of our God and Father is this: look after orphans and widows in their tribulation, and keep oneself without spot from the world. Not even one little spot from the world. How in the world can you be no part of the world? How in the world can you be without spot from the world? What does all that mean? Well, people have had various theories down through the ages. But perhaps we could illustrate it like this. When a missionary or an international construction worker is preparing to go to their assignment in a foreign country, they're given a series of vaccinations. Now, those vaccinations are to protect them from the diseases that are common in the area of the world that they will be living and working. They are not sent there to be isolationists. They are sent there to interact with the people and to preach the good news of the kingdom. They'll eat their food, they'll learn to talk their language, and they will be with them for the purpose of accomplishing the preaching activity. However, without those vaccinations, the chances that they could be successful are slim. In fact, the chances are very good that they will sicken and die in just a little bit of time. Well, brothers and sisters, what our Creator, what our loving Heavenly Father, Jehovah, wants for us, and what His Son was directing, was a way in which we could carry out the work that we have to do, even in this difficult time of the end, and yet be protected. The vaccinations, so to speak, come from His Word, the Bible. It tells us what it is that we can do and what it is that we must stay away from. Now, we're going to take time as we bring this part of the session to a conclusion to talk about some areas where you and I must keep ourselves without spot from the world. And the first one that we want to consider is the one that is mentioned many different ways in the Bible, but we're just going to look at this one. Proverbs chapter 13. Would you turn there with me, please? Proverbs 13, verse 20. Now here the scriptures say, he that is walking with wise persons will become wise. He that is having dealings with the stupid ones will fare badly. Now, we've heard that scripture before, and we recognize that what is said in Proverbs is in harmony with 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad associations spoil useful habits. It seems like we're hearing that counsel all the time. Isn't that true? And yet, this is a means by which we can actually accomplish the work that we need to do in the world and keep ourselves without spot from it. But we have to be constantly aware of where we're at and what we're doing when it comes to this matter of association. One Bible translation said this, it says, hang out with fools and watch your life fall to pieces. And really, that's what the Bible is warning us about. We need to be careful. Now, this world has very subtle ways of making us spotted. In fact, there's so much influence from the spirit of the world that if we're not careful, we start to be spotted. We may not even recognize that it is happening. One time we were talking with, actually it was one of the elders and I were out in service, and we went by the school as it was letting out to pick up his daughter from school. Now, she was a nice young lady, and we were glad to get her. But as I watched the kids come out of the school, I could see that this was an atmosphere that would be very, very difficult for any of our young people. You know, those kids were coming out of that building. They had on the gangster look, big clothes, the bandanas, and every walking. You know how they walk with the attitude. You know, and I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, whoa, I sure wouldn't want my little girl going to school like that. Well, in talking with her in the car, you know, she had an interesting statement. She said, you know, kids at my school aren't that bad. And I'm looking at her and I'm saying to myself, what? Are you kidding? I would want a howitzer with me if I was going in that school. They're not that bad. And then I was talking about it with my wife later. And, you know, we came to the conclusion that that doesn't look bad if you're feeding your mind on something else. You see, if you're looking at MTV and you're looking at these music videos and these other things, then what you see there is so much worse than this, that this now starts to look tame to you. Isn't that true? It's how association begins to spoil useful habits. And so as a consequence, little by little, you see, we become spotted. We become more and more like the world. I was out in service one day, and we were just getting out of the car. We were making some return visits, and there was a young brother that was evidently in that neighborhood. I didn't recognize him at first, but he recognized me. And so right away, he hollers at me. He's going like, yo, brother, see how you all doing? Hey, nice to see you. You know, the first thing I think is, you know, he's going to do great in gestures on the Theocratic Ministry School. And it really didn't occur to me later that all this stuff is coming from what? He's not learning that by associating with the brothers and sisters, is he? You see, he's learning that because somewhere down the road, his association is beginning to spot him. He's more and more like the world. Now, we don't say, you know, that he's in the world, but at the same time, you know where I come from, friends, if it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it looks like a duck, you know what we conclude? It's a duck, isn't that right? That's what association will do for us. We have to be careful. But yet some people would say, well, now, wait a minute. You see, really, just one little spot, I mean, is that so bad? Well, friends, if you went to the doctor and he took an x-ray and he said, you know what, there's a spot on your lungs, how would you feel about that? So you'd be worried about it, isn't that true? What is it? What's it doing there? How to get there? What are we going to do about it? Because in the world we live in today, you see a spot on the lungs, you better be concerned. Isn't that right? The time to be concerned, friends, is before we get the spot. Absolutely. You see, you can plant a garden in the grass, but when the grass gets in the garden, that's not good. Isn't that true? You can have a ship in the water, but when the water gets in the ship, that's not good. You can live in the world, but when the world gets in you, that is definitely not good. We need to be very guarded about this matter of association. Now, here's a second area that can spot us with. Oh, you know what? Before I go on, let me go back just a minute, because as I'm thinking about this, you know what just came to my mind is internet. And I'll tell you, I was watching one of the morning newscasts the other day, and they had a program on the morning news about an internet site called MySpace.com. You know, they were showing what some young people, and evidently it's a site that is visited by a lot of young people, they were showing what some young people are putting on this particular website. They were showing the obscenity and the grossness and the sexually provocative language, and they were showing the nude pictures of young people that they were taking of themselves and posting on the internet. And you know, this internet problem, in the world we lived in the past, if you wanted to see something seedy, something really gross, you had to go to a bad part of town. You had to risk being seen by somebody, being caught, whatever the case may be, and you might go in and you might be able to find yourself some pornography. But today, you see, all you have to do is just have cable television or direct TV or the internet or any other means, and all of a sudden you can be into the deep things of Satan in a heartbeat. Isn't that true? And how good is the Society's Council that families take those computers out of the kids' rooms and put them out in the middle of the living room somewhere so that they can be monitored. Now, I'm not saying that any of our young people are involved in anything like that, but then I'm not saying they're not either. Parents, you need to know, and you need to find out, and you need to recognize that if that's the case, Jehovah is not one to be mocked. Whatever a man is sowing, this he will in fact reap. It's a law, just like the law of gravity. You can't escape it. You can't get away from it. There are no exceptions ever. We need to be careful of association. Here's a second area, and it has to do with material things. Now, friends, you know, we've heard a lot about the need to avoid adopting the world's attitude toward material possessions. I'm convinced that when we get into the new system and we look back, we're going to say that materialism was one of the single most powerful and effective tools that Satan used against God's people in these last days. Now, some would say, well, what about persecution? Well, let me tell you a story. We served the Polish congregation, and you know that Poland was under ban for 40 years. There we met a sister who, along with her two sons, worked under ban, printing, recopying the Watchtower, distributing the literature in Poland during the communist ban. They did so at the risk of their lives. Now, in 1989, that ban was lifted. Shortly thereafter, that family moved to the United States. Those boys got involved in the good things. the high living, the material things that we have in this country that was unavailable to them in Poland. You know where they are now? Not with us anymore. See, they've gone. They've left Jehovah in the pursuit of more and more in a material way. You know what their mother said? With tears in her eyes, she said, I would give anything, if we could be back in Poland under ban again. Persecuted by the king of the north, I would give anything to be there again. That's the powerful enemy that is arrayed against us, a tool that the devil is using. We have to be careful. Even back in the first century, remember the Apostle Paul's traveling companion Demas? Remember what happened to Demas? The scriptures say that Paul writes to Timothy, Demas has forsaken me because he loved the present system of things, and he has gone to Thessalonica. So he didn't say he left the truth, but what he did was he left Paul, he left his missionary assignment, and he went back to Thessalonica. Why there? Well, it was a prosperous area. Could it have been the draw of materialism? Could it have been the things that could be offered him or available to him in a material way? Very, very possibly. And so while it may be that he did not leave the truth, is there a spot from the world on his record? There's evidently something there, isn't that right? Because the Bible does not speak of that very favorably. Now here's a third area that should warrant our attention. We talked a little bit about it in the needs of the circuit part, this matter of recreation. But, friends, when it comes to entertainment and recreation in this system, Satan he has perverted almost everything. Isn't that right? I mean, the television, the movies, the music, videos, video games. If you could imagine, he has taken and put his mark on everything. And some of these things are given awards for artistic achievement. Right now, what do they got? They got some movie out about homosexual cowboys. I mean, John Wayne would turn over in his grave. And it's got all kinds of awards. Talk about coming out of the closet. They took the closet and tore it down and burned it. There's no closet anymore. The entertainment media, including television, videos, video games, MTV, are assaulting people with a vengeance. And what about the music? Songs with explicit lyrics. You know what? When I was a kid, if you had a t-shirt, and I actually saw this happen one time, somebody had an expletive on a t-shirt, and they arrested them. And it wasn't the worst word you could think of even then. But it was called obscene, public obscenity, and they arrested them for having it on their t-shirt. Now, the other day, I was listening to some rap music. Well, I wasn't listening to it on purpose. I pulled into a gas station, and I was getting some gas in the car, and all of a sudden the car's vibrating. You know, this thing, it's off. What's going on? Well, a big SUV had pulled in, and that thing must have had 15 speakers. I don't know what was keeping the bumpers on it. You could feel it pulsating inside you. You know what I'm saying? And the language, brothers and sisters, couldn't believe it. You know, I used to work in construction. I work with worldly men, around worldly men in the construction business. Even there, I never heard the degradation that I heard coming out of that vehicle that was so loud everybody in 3 blocks could have heard it. And nobody evidently thought much about it. What a world is this? But do you think it could be happening? I don't remember if I told you this experience or not, but my wife and I came in from service. We were serving a congregation. And we were all out in the parking lot. It was a beautiful day. It was a Saturday. And over in the corner of the parking lot, whole congregation out there, was a little 8-year-old girl. She had earphones. And everybody's visiting and talking about their experiences and how much fun they've had in the ministry. And I look over here, and here's this little girl. So I just walk over there, and she sees me and smiles. And I said, "What are you listening to, sweetheart?" She says, "I'm listening to some music, Brother Coffin." I said, "Could I listen?" She said, "Sure." And she takes it off, and I put those things up to my ears. And friends, I honestly hope that this little girl did not know or did not understand the words she was hearing. It was sorrowful. I'm telling you. It was perversion and filth and disgust in every way. Here she was in the middle of the congregation, parents there, elders there, others there, adults all around her. She's dancing to the music, and nobody was paying any attention. How do we get spotted with the world, friends? It's easy. It can happen so quickly. Satan's got a whole world that is so filthy that it can happen. We may not even realize it's happening. See if you recognize these words. In olden days, a glimpse of stocking was looked upon as something shocking. But now, heaven knows, anything goes. Good authors, too, who once knew better words, now use only 4-letter words, writing prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today, and anything goes. You recognize those words? Maybe not. A song written by Cole Porter in the 1930s about these words. Woe to those who are saying that good is bad and bad is good. To those making light for darkness and darkness for light, saying bitter is sweet and sweet is bitter. You recognize those words from the prophet Isaiah, 732 BCE? They both say the same thing, don't they? See, the world gradually takes away godly standards. They paint euphemisms of one kind or another to make their degradation seem like it's nothing. People have an affair today, and what do they say? Oh, it's a dalliance. And it's adultery. People have preteens who are fornicators, and they're called sexually precocious. Some talk about hooking up, meaning casual sex. A friend with benefits. That's a sexual partner that makes no emotional demands. Discussions on family life in school is just another euphemism for pornography in the classroom. Abortion has become choice, not murder. So what are we to conclude, brothers and sisters? Yes, the world's gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today, and heaven knows anything goes. Some scientists studied hair from the corpse of Beethoven. You know why he died? He had 100 times the normal amount of lead in his body. And all they could figure was the fact that he liked to go to a mineral spa to relax. And what he didn't realize, that mineral spa was feeding his body lead poison. He died at the age of 57. What he thought was relaxing him, refreshing him, entertaining him, was in fact killing him. And brothers and sisters, the world's entertainment, the devil will entertain you to death. And he'll do it subtly. We need to recognize that these are dangerous times. This is no time to compromise on Jehovah's righteous standards. This is a time to pay more than the usual attention to the direction that we have been given. Now is a time, brothers and sisters, to hear the counsel, to give deep thought to it, to meditate on it, and to apply it, because the choice is ours. Jehovah's not going to force anyone to serve him, but if we want to serve him, it has to be on his standards. So all of us need to make sure that we are paying close attention to the counsel, to keep ourselves separate, to guard our association, to guard our entertainment, to really recognize that the counsel that we have been given to keep ourselves without spot from this world is given because God loves us, he cares about us, he wants us to be successful, he wants us to have the happiest possible life now, he wants us to enjoy everlasting life in a righteous new world where only the clean will live.